Hello and welcome to this week's episode of #Leadership What's on Your Mind. Remember, we're a podcast to make you stop and think about your leadership journey and add value by speaking to amazing people with amazing stories and experts in their field. So if you haven't already, make sure you follow us on your podcast provider or follow us on the YouTube channel. So today we are speaking to David. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. And you?
Yeah, good, thank you. I'm so pleased to have you on. You hit a few of my interesting topics that you have a lot of knowledge about. So, guys, there's a couple of things David's going to be sharing with us with his research and his sort of expertise in the fields of that you'll find out more about. I'm gonna steal your thunder. So, David, as I hit the 20-minute timer, introduce yourself. Let the audience know who you are, what you do.
My name's David Florence. I am based near to Bath. And a few years ago, I had a bit of a wake-up call. And I call it it was actually a literal bang to the head. But what was amazing about it, although it didn't feel like it at the time, what was amazing is that the very next day, it changed how I viewed myself and how I wanted to move through this world. It was all, I don't want to go into too much. I mean, the story is out there. I don't mind telling people the story, but just to keep it short, it did involve a lot of alcohol. It did involve me sitting by the side of the road at 5 o'clock in the morning. And it did involve a paramedic coming up to me and me not even realizing that the paramedic was here for me. And in fact, my question to the paramedic was, can I help? In other words, I thought he was lost. That was how my mind was working. Wow. And he took a photograph of my head. And obviously my head was covered in blood. And I went, okay, fine. I see what's going on. But anyway, so it just made me think, no, hang on a second. That's not how a husband and a father should act. Even though it was a silly mistake and it happens to everybody, it's not how I wanted to be. And it made me also realize that there were things in my life that I needed to improve, partly to do with my own mental health and physical health, but also to do with my job. So anyway, from that, I dove straight into cold therapy. This was the winter time. I'd been watching videos on YouTube about Wim Hof's. This is back in 2017. And I thought, this is brilliant. This is what I need. I need the cold to shock me. I need it to wake me up from the state that I was in. And it did exactly that. And then I started getting into the breath work that goes hand in hand with the Wim Hof method. And from there, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, really, as I've chronicled my journey on YouTube. The YouTube channel has gotten bigger and bigger. And because I've continued what I call my N=1 or N1 research program, every day I'm seeking and finding new ways to further enhance my physical and mental health. And it's a lot of it is prompted by people offering suggestions on YouTube. Dave, have you thought about doing this? Have you heard about breatharianism, which is a thing? It is a thing. We won't go into it now. And so then I've become qualified in various different things, from breath work to something called flow and flow state experiences, to NLP, to clinical hypnotherapy. And I now combine all of that knowledge and do online programs. I've got a trauma program that's about to be released in about a month's time. So that's for people who've experienced trauma. And this is an online program to help them deal with it and overcome the experience. And then I do one-to-ones. And I've also just recently entered the corporate space, and I'm doing programs, short webinars that will help those in the corporate space deal with stress, anxiety, give them tools to wake them up before a meeting. There's a particular breath technique that I did just before here. So there's loads of things that I know I can pass on that would be a great benefit to people in the corporate space, because let's face it, right now, everybody's suffering. We're all on this, as I call the anxiety-ometer. We're either down here and we can cope, and we've got tools that allow us to deal with it, or we're way over here and it's leading to chronic conditions. So I think everybody needs natural tools like this to help calm what's going on up here.
Amazing. Yeah, and I shared with you just before we jumped on as well, the reason I've got you on is the same reason we had the sleep expert on, because it's not directly linked to leadership, but it is at the same time. So let's start where we start with everybody and cover these sort of leadership questions. Obviously, we're #leadership, what's on your mind? What comes to your mind when you hear the word leadership?
That a leader isn't just the person that has that title. And in fact, if they want to be an effective and efficient leader, they need to understand themselves more than anybody else before they can start imparting their knowledge onto others. That's one of the things I've learned as I've gone into a better understanding about how this works and how this works, and I've been better able at accepting who I am. I've become better at passing on the knowledge that I've gained. As I do now see myself as a leader because I've gained this knowledge and people are benefiting from it. So yeah, I think a leader is far much more than it ever was before. It's not just about the fact that you've climbed the ladder and gained the title. If you want to be an effective leader where you have people trusting you and will follow you, you need to understand yourself.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. So staying specifically with you, it amazes me how far a lot of people go back on this question, but you specifically, where do you think your leadership journey started? Whether it's a light bulb moment at the time, or whether it was something you now reflect on that was when it was. How far do you go back?
It's a really good question. I've never been asked that question before, but I immediately think it is during my YouTube journey when I started getting questions from people who saw me as the expert. I didn't think of myself as an expert, but they perceived, because of the knowledge that I was passing out there, that I was. And let's face it, whenever we talk about experts, what does that really mean? It just means you know more than somebody else. So that was it. And that's when I saw myself as a leader, in the sense that people were seeking advice from me and they were enjoying the knowledge that I was giving them. And I still get that now on YouTube. Every day I'll get comments, questions, all about a whole variety of different topics. Some of them I can't answer. And most of them I can, but some of them I can't answer. And in which case, I'll refer them, or I'll just be honest and say that's just not my bag. But
I love the fact that your journey is that evolution.
Yes.
That's your journey that you've recorded. It's that lifelong learning, isn't it? That lifelong journey, which is really important. And really, a lot of the guests we've had on the podcast, it's when you actually hear about somebody's journey, it's really captivating, and you don't realize how much that you can get from somebody just telling their story.
Yeah, because I think we all need inspiration. And inspiration is often short-lived, so we can't be purely filled by that or fueled by it, obviously. But I think when I think about the amount of years that I spent doing a job that I didn't really like, I wasn't connected to it in a passionate way, and I also had a limiting belief, a self-limiting belief that I wasn't capable of doing anything else, that I think there are lots of people out there like me back then. And I think it's helpful for them to hear stories from real people that have made a big change in their life. Especially, I was about to say older than I actually am. I will be 48 in December. And I think, when you think it was only 2017 that I started making significant changes, most people at that age will believe that that's it. Their career is as whatever it is that they do, and that they can't possibly change it. But of course you can. And when you do, if you are able to link what you love with what you do, funnily enough, when I ran a little recruitment company, our tagline was a Confucius statement. Find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And I really believed it, but it was, it helped because our company was called Zen Consulting. But apart from that, perhaps there was a bit of a disconnect there. Whereas now, not only do I believe it, but I live it.
Yeah.
I love what I do now.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's a big driver for me as well. Like being able to do, you don't call it, I don't even like the tag work. it's just something, it's a passion, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Charles, I'm really interested. There's three things here. You've obviously got the flow that you've mentioned, and the breath work, and then sort of like the bigger wellness piece. We haven't got an hour to fill all this. So can we start with the breath work? Because again, we joked, didn't we, about like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it would be, yes, I'm all right. I'm breathing in and out. Thank you very much. It's been on my radar because I've got a swimming background. I love anything to do with free diving or breath holding, but I've not gone into it as much as you have. Can you tell us in like layman's terms, what that actually looks like regards to the results you can get, how quickly can people start having an appreciation of it? Is that okay to sort of share that with us?
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. Well, as you know, it's a subject matter I love talking about. So let's break it down then. First of all, most people aren't breathing properly. There are a lot of people that maybe just breathing with their mouth. The reason why they shouldn't do that, by the way, unless their nose is completely, unless they really can't breathe through it, and therefore they have to breathe through their mouth. If their nose is working fairly well, they need to try and train it to use this. There's a reason why it's on your face. When you breathe oxygen through your mouth, the oxygen doesn't know where to go. There isn't a receptor inside your head that tells the oxygen where to go. So if you imagine, we breathe in oxygen, we expel carbon dioxide. Previously, not so long ago, we used to believe that carbon dioxide was just a toxic gas that we had to get rid of. We now understand it's far more than that. There's a huge and very important relationship between carbon dioxide and oxygen. But again, keeping it simple, if you breathe through your nose, a number of functions occur by having this conch on your face. It cools the air, first of all, and makes the air the correct temperature. It helps to add a little bit of nitric oxide to it, which again helps because nitric oxide has a number of benefits. Again, we won't go into that at the moment. I find it so difficult when I'm whittling this story down. But also, it adds a level of viscosity to the air. It provides, it strengthens the lungs when you breathe through this because it's a narrower pathway. Obviously, you've got your hairs that filter out any particles that you don't want in your system. So this provides a very important function, but most important of all, because there's a receptor that when the oxygen goes through the nose into the nasal cavity, there's a receptor there that says, here's oxygen, and it allows that oxygen to get into the bloodstream where you need it. Once the oxygen is in the bloodstream, it can then, with the relationship with carbon dioxide, filter out into your tissues where you need it most. So let's say you're breathing through your mouth and you're doing that predominantly. It's very likely that you might have muscle pain, you might have other conditions, and it's all because the oxygen isn't going into the tissues where you need it. So there is an incredible relationship just with breath alone as to how well you are, as in how healthy and happy you feel just by the breath. And in fact, what we now know is, so there's a relationship between breath and the gut, for example. So for cells to break down food, they need oxygen. So if you're not breathing correctly, then the cells aren't breaking down food. That causes an issue in the gut. That leads to other conditions that a Western medically trained doctor, for example, might not necessarily associate that and just try to heal the problem in the gut. Whereas if they were able to improve the person's breathing, for example, that might alone deal with the issue. So there's so many wonderful things you can do with just getting this bit right. The other thing
is that just a case of people can improve that by just reminding themselves. Is a technique by just saying, right, am I breathing, a self-awareness piece of, am I breathing through my nose? Is that how simple it could be, that you could have actually some recognizable benefits from that?
Yep. Mouth taping at night would be another amazing benefit. I still do it.
Yeah, I've got some of my ex-colleagues, I've not tried it, but yeah.
The only thing I would say is don't hermetically seal the mouth. Because you're going to wake up as I did when I first tried that, and you're going to think somebody's trying to suffocate you. So what you want to do is just get a strip, and you can get this microbial medical strip tape, and you just put it over there, just a little strip, and that's enough. And that will just trick the body and brain. It's like a lot of the stuff that I deal with and talk about are hacks, because it's a good way of describing it. You can hack the brain and body to do what it's meant to do, just with a little bit of assistance. So you can obviously start to focus on that. What I would teach, though, is if you start focusing on breathing through your nose, at the same time that would bring even greater reward would be to start to breathe with your belly. And that means when you breathe in, your stomach goes out. It's going to feel weird at first because you're going to think, hang on a minute, surely when I go in, the stomach should go in. Sorry, when I breathe in, the stomach should go in, but that's not the case. You want your stomach to move out when you breathe in, and that's right at the root. So in yogic terms, they call that the root chakra. But we don't have to talk in those terms. We can just simply mean the base of your belly underneath your belly button. And then you breathe from there, stomach goes out, and then you focus on your diaphragm moving, expanding out. And then the final bit of the breath is at the top. So for a lot of people that breathe incorrectly, they're just breathing in the chest. And let's say they're feeling stressed and they breathe right at the top here. So if you imagine, that means if you've got these big lungs, all they're doing is just inhaling, exhaling right at the top of the lungs. They're not getting a big lungful. So if they're stressed or anxious, they're exacerbating the condition simply by breathing improperly because they're not getting enough air. So it's causing them to breathe quickly because they're just, sort of inhaling, exhaling at the top of their lung. And that faster inhale, exhale will make their situation worse. They're going to feel more stressed. So yeah, there's
I love that. And I'm laughing here because I'm conscious of my breathing throughout the whole of this episode. Yeah. Probably the audience are thinking, yeah, they're probably going along with it as you're saying this, because I am. Amazing. And again, you can, like you said, it's more, not accepted is a word, but it's more known now, isn't it, about the power of, yes, in elite sports they go into a lot of breath work, but I think it's coming out into the sort of the bigger world of actually it can really make some really good benefits. Can we link that? We've got like 4 minutes left, so can we link that? I know this isn't a subject that can be fitted into 4 minutes, however let's try. About the word, just the word flow, because I like the word flow. I think it explains quite a few things of how we're looking at high performance, how we're looking at how teams interact. It's effortless. But what, in your world, how do you define flow, or how do you explain to people what flow is? So
there's two ways of looking at flow. There's flow on one side where life is just going to plan. Everything is flowing. In other words, every conversation you have with somebody is positive. You start to see opportunities around you. You realize that your body and mind are moving together. That's one way of describing flow. And then there's the other bit that I teach. Through various different practices, you can encourage flow state moments. Flow state moments are those heightened gamma brainwave-led moments that often people in the sporting world experience. And it's where you have tunnel vision. Nothing will take you out of it. You are so in flow, it feels like you can turn down time. In other words, if you're on the rugby field, for example, you are, and I've heard Johnny Wilkinson talk about this before, that he knew instinctively where the ball was going to go before his boot would kick. If he was in that flow state moment, he knew where the ball was going to go. He also knew nobody could tackle him. He knew that he would be that much quicker and that he was able to slow down time. That's what it felt like, and that's what it feels like in flow states. But you can experience flow states even when you're at the computer if certain elements occur that encourage that flow state moment.
What are those elements?
Well, there's quite a few. So in the sporting world, the reason why they experience it is, of course, because they have reached a level of expertise through hours and hours of training. If you look at Csikszentmihalyi, who's a famous psychologist, and he was able to map out flow. It's all to do with the level of challenge and your level of expertise. That there is a point at which they can both meet, and that's where you're likely to experience flow. Because if the challenge is too great, then it's very likely that if your expertise isn't there to match that challenge, then you'll give up or you'll get bored. If your expertise is too good and the challenge is not, it's too easy, again, you're going to get bored. So you need to have just enough challenge that it is a challenge and just enough skill to be able to meet that challenge. And that's how you can self-create it. On top of that, through research with those at the Flow Global Initiative, one of the things that I coach, is that it all comes down to various different things around developing a flow personality through environmental reasons to cognitive cognitive practices to vagal practices to do with your breath. So there's a number of things that you can now do that we've figured out that will encourage those flow state moments. And they're not necessarily the things that those in the sporting world would have done. It's just that through research, we've been able to understand how you can hack it and create it yourself.
Amazing. So can I just put a final sort of thought your way? So one of my identifying factors I saw when I was outside the military in the corporate world for a little bit of time was and I shared this with you before we jumped on, that busy being busy. Burning the candle at both ends, or the candle's just ignited. What would be a couple of things that you'd encourage people to do, just simple things? Obviously, we've got the breath thing. What can somebody do that's sat at a desk, or they're sat at home with the current climate? What can they do that's going to give them a little bit of change for them to go, oh, I see that, that's a positive thing?
There's loads of things you can do. And also I should add, and I was having this conversation, an amazing conversation with somebody just before this actually, that those that are peak performers, those that are high achievers, work blimmin' hard. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's through determination, commitment, and discipline that will get you to those high levels. However, if you do that without having a balance of other things that keep your body and mind in the right state, at some point you're going to become ill. It happens to most if they don't look at the rest of their life. However, let's say you are sat at home right now and you're in front of the computer and you're thinking, hang on a minute, I've been sat down for too long. You've got to remind yourself, don't allow yourself to be sat down for more than 45 minutes, I think. And what you can do, get yourself a little timer that goes off every 45 minutes to an hour. And that little timer will remind you to do something else that's in contrast to what you've been doing while sat on your ass. So it could be go and do some squats, go and do some push-ups. It could be just go for a walk in nature, slow it down, say 40% of your walking pace, slow it down, and then marry your breathing to the beats of your walking. Tap into your senses. What can you see, hear, feel? It could be that you just have 5 minutes to spare and you do a little breath work. I've got loads on my YouTube channel where, short burst breath work that will encourage the oxygen and the blood flowing around your body, that when you go back to work, you're going to be far more efficient. Most people plow through, force it, and they get to a point of very low productivity and efficiency because they're forcing it when their brain is already turned off. So you're far better off to remind yourself, right, it's been 45 minutes. I know what I should do. Either chair yoga, again, there's some on my channel, and I wouldn't encourage you doing that all day because it means you're still sat down. But if you know you've got 2 hours of Zoom, do chair yoga. If not, there's a whole load of other things you can do. Encourage, see those spiral staircase there? That becomes a monkey bar place for me. I'm always on there, pull-upping, climbing around on it.
Yeah. Amazing. I love that, because again, it's just something, isn't it? And we're going to put your YouTube channel in the comments below as well for people to go and check out, subscribe, and you'll say they're little trigger things, aren't they? Little every 45 minutes do something over nothing, because before we know it, as we know, busy being busy, it comes the end of the day and nothing's happened. So or nothing's been sort of, your brain hasn't been engaged to do something different. So
totally.
Dave, I could speak to you all day, and we're going to continue this conversation off this episode as well, but thank you so much for your time.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Good. So guys, if you've enjoyed that, make sure you let us know in the comments, what did you get from that? What have been your experiences? Thank you for subscribing and following us on your YouTube channel and your podcast provider. This is the last episode of 2021. So we're going to have a break for December, but we're going to be sending lots of highlights out. We're going to be telling you who's coming up next year. We're still recording. We've got some amazing guests coming next year. And thank you again for following. And we'll stay in touch, David, and speak to you very soon.
Thanks, Stuart.
Take care, guys. Bye.